All right, what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Today is June 5th, 2025, about 7:38 p.m. where I'm at right now, and we are continuing our 12th book in our Book to React series. This is episode 4 of reading Black Fatigue, How Racism Erodes the Mind, Body, and Spirit by Mary Frances Winters. I want to apologize to anybody who was waiting last night for this live stream. I didn't have a chance to do it because I just realized it was my wife's anniversary. It was my anniversary with my wife. If you go to the video on my channel titled My Big Fat Turkish Wedding, that was posted the day after my wife and I got married for the second time. We got married the first time on May 20th, 2022? 2023? I forgot exactly. Yeah, it was definitely 2022. Acti and I got married the first time on May 20th, 2022, and married again on June 4th, 2023. So there's a lot of anniversaries. We met for the first time on July 4th, 2021. Yes, 2021. So yeah, there's a lot that's been going on with my personal life. I've been working a lot, trying to spend time with the missus and also, get ready for this trip to Norway that we got going on. So there's a lot going on in my personal life, which is why it's hard to constantly, come live sometimes. And but we're going to be continuing our reading of this book. We're jumping here to chapter 3, Then Is Now. Everybody go pick up this book on Amazon. As you know, you can get it for the humble price of only $17 paperback, barely $10 on Kindle. And we're going to be reading chapter 3. And because I didn't do it yesterday, we will also read chapter 4. So we might be on live for about an hour or two. I'll be reacting to the text, responding to any comments. Let me know what y'all think. Let's go. So, Then Is Now. Early in the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak of 2020, reports that black people were 2 to 4 times more likely to die from the disease than white people were met with surprise. I was surprised by the surprise voiced by politicians and other leaders because health disparities among black people are well researched and, I thought, well known. I discuss health disparities in depth in chapter 4. This is another example of sublime ignorance. Not only do many, especially white people, not know how much about racist systems that disproportionately affect black people, they also seem to be unaware of the lack of progress in reversing the trends. This is a major source of fatigue for black people. There has been a lack of significant progress since legislation such as the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision of 1954, ending segregated public schools, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 banning segregation in public places and discrimination in hiring, Voting Rights Act of 1965 guaranteeing what had been promised in the 15th Amendment, and the Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968, which was supposed to ban housing discrimination. Since these legislative actions and others designed to eradicate overt acts of racism, socioeconomic, educational, housing, health, and workplace outcomes have improved very little, if at all. During the Winters Group's learning sessions, we sometimes engage participants in a fact or fiction exercise in which we display a statistic about some aspect of diversity and ask for a show of hands. Is this fact or fiction? A few of the race statistics that we sometimes include are the following. Test yourself before you look at the correct answers, shared in the next paragraph. Black college graduates with similar backgrounds as whites have twice the unemployment rate. Fact or fiction? I'm going to argue that's fact. African American babies are twice as likely to die before their first birthday, regardless of the socioeconomic level of their mothers. That's fact. I'll say that's fact. Blacks with advanced degrees earn about the same as their white counterparts with similar degrees. I would say that's fiction. All right. Do you think you got the answers right? Number 1 and 2 are facts, and number 3 is fiction. Because even after controlling for age, gender, education, and region, black workers with advanced degrees are paid 18.5% less than white workers. Were you surprised by any of these data? Many white participants in our session usually are. They say that they cannot believe that there are still such widespread disparities. Many of the people of color in the sessions are, however, not surprised. While it is good to raise awareness. It is frustrating and fatiguing that session after session, white people are not aware that such inequities exist. In a recent conversation with a black woman executive at a major healthcare organization, she lamented that it is maddening for her to sit in meetings with the CEO and his direct reports time and time again when they seem to be clueless about the structural racism that exists in their system. She said that even after years of training in cultural competence, anti-racism, and unconscious bias, they do not seem to understand how the system perpetuates racism. This is why I argue if you're black in this world, you already have a PhD in sociology. You already have a PhD in anthropology. You already have a PhD in socioeconomics, because just the lived black experience in America lets you understand so much about the human nature. Continuing here. Stagnant socioeconomic progress. The most alarming and perhaps the most telling are the socioeconomic indicators. Are the economic indicators, though I think socioeconomic indicators could be used as well. Black households have the lowest median household income and net worth of any demographic group, and those measures of progress have not improved. Unfortunately, then is now. Figure 3.1 shows that black household median income is the lowest of all groups and has only increased an infinitesimal amount, $62, in the last decade, compared with much larger gains for whites and Hispanics. Trust me, I feel that because I'm still broke. Still grinding, still broke. That's crazy. Net worth is the difference between one's assets and liabilities. The net worth of white people was 10 times that of black and Hispanic people in 2016. While median net worth tends to increase for whites as levels of educational attainment rise, even controlling for educational differences, the gap does not improve. For example, the median net worth of black households headed by someone with at least a bachelor's degree was $26,300 in 2013. While for households headed by white college degree holders, the net worth was $301,000. Damn. Let's read that again. For example, the median net worth of black households headed by someone with at least a bachelor's degree was $26,300 in 2013. While for households headed by white college degree holders, the net worth was $301,300, 11 times that of black people. That's amazing. In other words, contrary to logic, more education does not correlate with income equity. And shockingly, the median net worth of a single black woman without a bachelor's degree is $500, and with a bachelor's degree is $5,000. While a single white woman has a median net worth of $8,000 without a bachelor's degree and $35,000 with one. Amazing stuff here. Here are the statistics right here. Absolutely shocking. Wow. So there's been really no change, no gain. I think this goes to show to all the people out there who are talking about economic upliftment, get your education, all that type of stuff, that won't lead us to liberation. Economic upliftment, advanced degrees won't lead us alone to liberation. That doesn't mean we abandon education. That doesn't mean we abandon entrepreneurship. But we have to understand that has not been the way towards liberation. That's not working right here. All right? Let's continue. But what's happening with the Asians? Is it going down? For the Asians, is it negative? Is it going down? What's happening here? I don't know. Anyway, so continuing here. A large part of this disparity is intergenerational wealth transfer. White people have the opportunity to transfer their assets to their children, giving them a head start with net worth. Generationally, black families, because of the entrenched racist system, have not been able to amass wealth. As a matter of fact, many of us who have good jobs have to support our parents or other family members who have not been so fortunate, something known as the black tax. When you consider that nearly 1 in 5 black families have zero or negative net worth, and black household wealth is on track to reach zero by 2082, it is hard to imagine the possibility of blacks gaining financial freedom, let alone establishing generational wealth. Wealth is important to increase access to a better education, a healthy and safe living environment, better health care, and better job opportunities. Man, we got to get some money. Man. Who says money can't make you happy? Money can make you happy. White and non-Hispanic, whoo, look at that net worth. Look at that wealth. Look at all that money. I'm continuing. Several additional key factors exacerbate the vicious cycle of wealth inequality. Black households, for example, have far less access to tax-advantaged forms of savings, due in large part to a long history of employment discrimination and lack of access to financial institutions. A well-documented history of mortgage market discrimination means that blacks are significantly less likely to be homeowners than whites, and therefore are not able to access the tax advantages associated with home ownership, as discussed shortly. It is also well documented that black people face more discrimination in the labor market and are more likely to be underpaid and underemployed. Studies show that applicants with white names are 50% more likely to get a callback than those with black names, regardless of the industry or occupation. In summary, black families have less access to stable jobs, good wages, and retirement benefits at work, all key drivers of net worth. These persistent socioeconomic inequities maintain the intergenerational cycle of wealth inequality. While reparations may not completely fix the socioeconomic disparities, it is a start. I discuss reparations in Chapter 9. We must hold banks accountable. Unemployment rates for blacks have been double those of whites since the 1960s. Regardless of the time period, education level, or occupation, black unemployment rates are twice those of whites, and this discrepancy has held steady since the 1960s. While unemployment rates for every group were low in 2019 and have improved for marginalized groups, the disparity persists. So here's more. So U.S. unemployment rate by race. And black, just stays high. Woo, woo. Home ownership and gentrification continue to stymie progress. Black and Latino families are no more likely today to own their own home than they were in 1976, as shown in figures 3.4. Then is now. 50 years after the Federal Fair Housing Act banned racial discrimination in mortgage lending, African Americans and Latinos continue to be regularly denied conventional mortgage loans at rates much higher than their white counterparts. In a study by the Center for Investigative Reporting in 2018 of 61 metropolitan areas, even when controlling for applicants' income, loan amount, and neighborhood, black people were as much as 2.7 times less likely to be granted a loan. Just pure racism. That's just pure racism. Pure anti-blackness. Ain't that a shame? Look at this. Look at this. Home ownership. The data for Asian Americans started in 1988. Yeah. All right. So, continuing here. In the 1930s, surveyors within the Federal Home Owners Loan Corporation legally drew lines on maps all around the country, marking some neighborhoods red to indicate their rating as hazardous for bank lending because of the presence of African Americans or European immigrants, especially Jews. Under the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977, banks had a legal obligation not only to not discriminate, but also to solicit borrowers and depositors from all segments of their communities. This type of legislation has not quelled the systemic racism in housing. As a matter of fact, 75% of neighborhoods that had been marked hazardous in the Home Owners Loan Corporation's red line maps of the 1930s are still the most economically disadvantaged. Then is now. Relatedly, blacks still largely live in segregated neighborhoods according to the National Fair Housing Alliance. In today's America, approximately half of all black persons and 40% of all Latinos live in neighborhoods without a white presence. The average white person lives in a neighborhood that is nearly 80% white. Gentrification is also a key issue that negatively affects black and brown families. It is the systemic changing of underinvested, predominantly poor communities that low value to high value long-time residents and businesses are displaced, unable to afford higher rents, mortgages, and property taxes. Gentrification is happening all across the United States. Because of the displacement of poor people from their previous neighborhoods, it is almost impossible for them to find affordable housing. From Charlotte, where I live, to San Francisco, where I frequently consult, the lack of affordable housing is a problem of epic proportion. In the 1960s, gentrification was called urban renewal, a federally funded project to clean up slums. Oh, I didn't know that. In a 1963 television interview, James Baldwin said urban renewal is Negro removal. Then is now. The workforce. Little progress has been made in leadership positions in the workforce. Many companies continue to wrestle with the paucity of people of color in leadership ranks. Over 3 decades ago, when I started diversity and inclusion work, white male leaders lamented the lack of women and people of color in leadership roles and attributed it to their shorter tenure in large corporations. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was only 20 years old. Today, leaders still lament the lack of women and people of color in leadership roles, but the excuse now is that there are so few black and brown people with the qualifications that the competition is stiff, and they are lured away by other organizations. The reality is that black people leave organizations because of the fatigue associated with needing to constantly prove themselves and not being acknowledged for their contributions, which I explore in later chapters. Black employees with college or advanced degrees are also more likely than their white counterparts to be underemployed when it comes to their skill level. According to the Economic Policy Institute, 40% of black workers are in jobs that do not typically require a college degree, compared with 31% of white college graduates. In the 1980s, a black female friend of mine had risen through the ranks of a major corporation, but not until she had jumped through many more hurdles than her white male counterparts. She was a chemist by training and then got her MBA and then a doctorate in chemistry, as well as many professional certifications along the way. Tracy, as she needed. She retired from that organization and never made vice president. Tracy felt that she was micromanaged, required to be overeducated, and in the end, undervalued and underappreciated. She retired early because she was burnt out. Recent research by the Center for Talent Innovation reveals that these issues still continue to inhibit progress for black women. In healing sessions with black employees during the Black Lives Matter movement protests of 2020, needing to be overqualified for consolidations, for consideration or promotions was a common theme. You are never ready for the next level, no matter how many degrees or certifications you have. It is never enough. Then is now, and it is fatiguing. Ascend, the largest nonprofit pan-Asian organization for business professionals in North America, developed the Executive Parity Index, or EPI, to assess disparities in the leadership ranks. If the EPI is equal to 1.0, then a group's representation is the same at the top and bottom of the pipeline. If the EPI is less than 1.0 or below parity, then there are fewer at the top relative to those at the bottom. An EPI greater than 1.0 is above parity. Using the 2015 Equal Employment Opportunity Commission database of employment statistics by race, gender, and job classification, and applying the formula, white men have an EPI of 1.81, Hispanic men 1.07, white women 0.65, black men 0.63, Asian men 0.56, Hispanic men 0.49, black women 0.3, and Asian women 0.24. Obviously, with the exception of Hispanic men, black and brown people are woefully below parity. All you can say is Boy, imagine reading this coming home from work. Imagine reading this coming home from work. But it's good that we're reading, man, because a lot of our jobs, they work you to the bone all day, and they want you to come home and just turn on the TV and turn off your brain. Not on this side. So this was the headline in 1984. Many blacks jump off the corporate ladder, feeling their rise limited. Wall Street Journal, August 2nd, 1984. This was the headline in 2019. Study examines why black Americans remain scarce in executive suites. New York Times, December 9th, 2019. Then is now. The past has not passed. Several of my recent clients have initiated diversity efforts because their boards of directors are requiring it. These are the power brokers. Boards have the clout to dictate change. They are asking, why are there so few people of color in leadership roles? Why do they have such a high turnover rate among people of color? Most large organizations have a lot of work to do to change their culture in order to move from rhetoric to sustained equity. I have personally been consulting on this for over 3 decades, and then is now. Elected officials. Of course, we all point to the pinnacle achievement in politics of the election of the first black president, Barack Obama, in 2008 and again in 2012. While clearly a milestone, it did not come without backlash that we continue to contend with today. The reason we have the orange man is because of Trump, is because of Obama. Facts. For many white people, Obama's election was proof positive that racism was no longer an issue in the United States. We could declare it a nasty, ugly thing of the past. It was deemed by many a sign of the advent of a post-racial society. However, we started to see the backlash of his election very early on with death threats, personal attacks on his family, and a Congress that was determined to vote down any legislation that even remotely looked like it would benefit black and brown people. Many say that the election of Donald Trump was the ultimate backlash. I would say that. I would agree. On a positive note, we have seen tremendous progress in increasing the representation of black and brown people in the House of Representatives. However, there has been little progress in the Senate. 52 House members are black, putting the share of black House members 12% on par with the share of blacks in the U.S. population overall for the first time in history. Also, currently, 43 House members are Hispanic and 17 are Asian. The first black U.S. Senator, Hiram R. Revels, a Republican from Mississippi, was chosen by his state's legislature to fill an empty seat. He served for a year from 1870 to 1871. Since then, only 9 other black Americans have served in the Senate. America, this is not what you think it is. All right, voter suppression. Then is now. In terms of voter suppression, the 13th Amendment, 1865, to the Constitution abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, gave black people equal rights. And the 15th Amendment, 1870, specifically prohibits the government from denying U.S. citizens the right to vote based on race, color, or past servitude. The nation also adopted the Enforcement Act between 1870 and 1871 that criminalized voter suppression and provided federal oversight in elections. Reading this makes me feel like what really happened, because I feel like all of these amendments are being trampled on all the time in the U.S. The 13th Amendment, abolish slavery. Yeah, unless you're in prison, right? And we have people working in the fields right now in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana while a white man's on horseback with a shotgun. The 14th Amendment gave black people equal rights. Okay-ish. All right, where are our economic rights? Where are our rights in the criminal justice system? Those seem to be trampled on all the time. The 15th Amendment specifically prohibits the government from denying U.S. citizens the right to vote based on race, color, or past servitude. Yeah, until they gerrymander the county. Until they basically say that, this county that should be, divided 50-50 between black and white, they carve it up like a salamander, and now all the whites in this county get to basically dictate, the types of representatives that we have in state politics and also in federal politics, resulting in like the Marjorie Taylor Greens rising to prominence. I mean, it just seems like all of these amendments are BS. All of them are BS. The nation also adopted the Enforcement Act between 1870 and 1871 that criminalized voter suppression and provided federal oversight in elections. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 is considered landmark legislation to overcome legal barriers such as literacy tests and poll taxes that prevented African Americans from exercising their right to vote as guaranteed under the 15th Amendment. The act called for federal oversight to voter registration in areas where less than 50% of the non-white population had registered to vote, and authorized the U.S. Attorney General to investigate the use of poll taxes in state and local elections. In 2013, the Supreme Court declared the oversight provisional unconstitutional. In 2013, the Supreme Court declared the oversight provision unconstitutional. Shout out Clarence Thomas, that dickhead. Striking down this requirement has increased voter suppression. In Georgia, Secretary of State Brian Kemp put over 50,000 voter registrations on hold, 70% of which were black residents. Several states with large and growing black and Hispanic populations closed polling places. Texas closed over 400 polling places. Arizona closed over 200, and the state of Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, and South Carolina closed over 250. These closures are a direct result of the Supreme Court's decision not to hold the Voting Rights Act intact. Like I said, trampling over all of the rights. In 2016, 6.1 million Americans, mostly people of color, were unable to vote because of a felony conviction. Efforts to overturn such laws are often defeated. For example, voters in Florida passed legislation amending the state's constitution to restore voting rights to U.S. citizens with prior felony convictions. This change would have meant that 1.4 million Floridians, including 1 in 5 black residents, would regain their right to vote. However, Republican legislators in Tallahassee, led by Governor Republican Ron DeSantis, circumvented this action by imposing new financial restrictions, such as fees unrelated to citizen sentences for people with prior felony convictions to vote. Basically brought back the poll tax. But the Republicans brought back the poll tax, the party that says they want to uphold the Constitution and uphold the Bill of Rights and guarantee every citizen's right to vote, brought back poll taxes. The people of Florida said, hey, we want everybody to have the right to vote even if they have a felony conviction. And the Republicans said, hold my beer. Try me. Try me. These restrictions are similar to those of the Jim Crow era that perpetuated barriers to voting. In 2018, the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in Husted versus A. Philip Randolph Institute increased the possibility for voter suppression in that states were permitted to eliminate eligible Americans from their voter rolls, also known as purging, if they decided to skip some elections. Wow. The ruling supported Ohio's decision to purge 846,000, close to 1 million, black voters from its rolls for infrequent voting over a 6-year period. So basically, if you didn't vote, you won't get a chance to vote again. We'll take you off the voter rolls, and good luck trying to get back on. This is why you have to vote in every election. This is why, even though I don't live in Louisiana, I vote in every local, federal election that I can. As long as my what's the name of the lady? Registrar? I forgot the name. The lady who basically sends me my ballot in my email, shout out to her. I forgot her name. But every time she sends me an email, I get happy because I vote D down the ballot and I vote no, 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 no on basically anything those crazy Republicans in Louisiana are trying to pass. Anyway, in June 2019, the Supreme Court ruled that the federal government could not impede partisan gerrymandering on the state level, even though it admitted that gerrymandering could produce unfair outcomes. Our Supreme Court, y'all. Our Supreme Court is allowing things that it knows is wrong, like gerrymandering, to happen. The federal government, let's break that down. The Supreme Court said the federal government cannot break down gerrymandering, even if it knows and acknowledges that gerrymandering can make unfair outcomes. Insane. New software maximizes partisan advantage, and since state legislatures are predominantly Republican, voting districts have been redrawn to the disadvantage of Democrats. 79% of black people are registered Democrats, as are 62% of Latinos. Without political clout, it is impossible to change entrenched systems of discrimination. Too often, people of color are so fatigued from fighting these actions, they simply give up and do not vote, which leads to the increased chance of being purged from the rolls. Do you see how the system, not the people, is a problem? Yeah, I definitely see. Education. Public education is in crisis and has been for decades, with the most damaging impact on lower-income black and brown children. The 1954 landmark Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision banning segregation in public schools was the result of a hard-fought battle. Schools are more segregated today than in 1954. Children of color represent a majority of the student body in 83 of the 100 largest cities, and in all but 3, at least half of them attend a school where a majority of their peers are poor or low income. Researchers coined the term apartheid schools to describe schools where students of color form more than 99% of the population. Such schools educate 1/3 of the black students in New York City and half of the black students in Chicago. Nationwide, apartheid schools educate as many as 15% of black students and 14% of Latinos. Studies also show that the more schools are integrated, the better black students fare, including with lower dropout rates, higher standardized test scores, and improved outcomes for blacks in areas such as earnings, health, and incarceration rates. Racially diverse schools also benefit white students. Studies show that exposure to other students who are culturally and ethnically different from themselves leads to improved cognitive skills, including critical thinking and problem solving. Public schools attended by a majority of black and brown children are underfunded and underperforming. Despite decades of lawsuits throughout the country to eliminate the inequities, there remains a $23 billion gap in funding between school districts that serve predominantly black and brown students and those that serve white students, and they are serving the same number of students. Between 2005 and 2017, U.S. public schools were underfunded by $508 billion in Title I and Individuals with Disabilities Education Act federal dollars, money that is earmarked specifically to support 30 million of our most vulnerable students. The gap in standardized test scores of black children appears before they enter kindergarten and persists into adulthood. While it has narrowed since 1970, on average, black children still score below 75% of American white students on almost every standardized test. The reason for these differences are complex, and some experts say the gaps are more about teacher competencies and biases, lack of understanding of cultural differences, and how parents interact with their children than income, intelligence, or school funding. Research shows that non-black teachers have lower expectations of black students than black teachers. Black teachers only represent 10% of the teacher corps. Black men represent 2% of teachers. Black students are 3.8 times as likely as white students to receive one or more out-of-school suspensions, while 6% of all K through 12 students receive one or more out-of-school suspensions. The percentage is 18% for black boys, 10% for black girls, 5% for white boys, and 2% for white girls. Black children represent 19% of the nation's preschool population, yet 47% of those receiving more than one out-of-school suspension. In comparison, white students represent 41% of preschool enrollment, but only 28% of those receiving more than one out-of-school suspension. Black students are 2.3 times as likely as white students to receive a referral to law enforcement or get arrested because of a school-related problem. That's crazy. That should never happen. Unless you shoot up the school like little Timmy, unless you shoot up the school like Conrad, keep the police out of it. But you know what? American schools are a lost cause because they're literally a battleground. American schools are basically elephant waiting. Every American public school is elephant in waiting. Sorry, not public schools, all of them, including the private schools as well. Anyway, these disparities are related to deeply entrenched biases that white teachers hold about the innocence and intelligence of black children. I elaborate on this in Chapter 8. Even though there are a number of programs designed to recruit black people into the teacher corps, many leave the profession after a few years because of the fatigue of not having the resources or support to do their job effectively. I remember some years ago, the daughter of a friend of mine was required to make copies of a textbook pages because there were not enough textbooks to go around. She paid for the copies from her first year's teacher salary because the school did not have a copier that could handle the volume or a budget to cover the copies. The problem is not the children. The problem is the system. The continued gross inequities in access to quality education for black and brown children and the rampant bias that leads to disproportionality in punishment are interconnected with life outcomes such as job opportunities and ultimately socioeconomic progress. And then there is legislation that disadvantages black students. The current Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, rescinded Obama-era legislation on school discipline guidance that would have made it harder to suspend black students. The policy was scrapped based on research the Trump administration relied on that showed that black children are disciplined more than white children because black children exhibit behavioral issues that start earlier in life, rather than because of institutional racism. The administration used this one data point and ignored mountains of other evidence to the contrary. It is a vicious cycle that is fatiguing, then is now. Black fatigue, black fatigue, black fatigue. Shifting the focus from the children as the problem to the system would lead us to lobby for policies that would provide equitable, not equal funding to schools, make teacher salaries commensurate with their worth, like those of valued professionals in a corporation, focus on environmental racism in neighborhoods, ensure that parents earn a living wage. Corporations should fund public education. Hold school administrators accountable for inequitable outcomes and refuse to accept rationale like parents are not involved and do not care about their children's education. Start with the premise that all parents care about their children's education and all children can learn. If they are not learning, there is something wrong with the system, not the children. Facts, 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 facts. So here we go, criminal justice. At the National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama, more than 4,000 victims of racist lynching are remembered over the heads of visitors. From 1882 to 1968, 4,743 lynchings were recorded in the United States. Black people accounted for 72.7% of the people lynched. While these numbers seem large, the actual numbers are even bigger because it is known that not all lynchings were recorded. That's a staggering number. Staggering number, 5,000, close to 5,000 black lives lost for nothing. Lynchings, man, lynchings. This is why we're going to start lynching the white supremacists. Facts. We're going to find the white supremacists and we're going to lynch them. We're going to catch them. We're going to cut their genitalia off. We're going to hang them from trees. We're going to take pictures in front of the bodies. We're going to do all of that for the white supremacists. We're going to catch the white supremacists and we're going to lynch them. Let's read this number again because this number is just staggering. At the National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama, more than 4,000 victims of racist lynching are remembered over the heads of visitors. From 1882 to 1968, 4,743 lynchings were recorded in the United States. Black people accounted for 72.7% of the black people lynched. While these numbers seem large, the actual numbers are even bigger because it is known that not all lynchings were recorded. While lynchings, as historically defined, may not be happening anymore, that's debatable, 26% of civilians killed by police shootings in 2015 were black, even though black civilians represent only 12% of the U.S. population. And according to a study conducted in 2019 by Rutgers University School of Criminal Justice, Washington University's Department of Sociology, and the University of Michigan's Institute for Social Research, in the United States, African American men are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police than white men. Black women are 1.4 times more likely than white women to be killed by police. The researchers used verified data from police records from 2013 to 2018. Another study showed that 15% of the black people police killed in 2015 were unarmed. Let's repeat. Another study showed that 15% of the black people police killed in just 2015 were unarmed, compared with just 6% of white people who were unarmed when killed by police. A News One story released in June reported that 83 black men and boys have been killed by police since 2012. In addition, in that same time frame, at least 22 black women have been killed by law enforcement. Let's repeat that one more time because those are staggering statistics, and this really touches me. A News One story released in June reported that 83 black men and boys have been killed by police since 2012. Disgusting. And this book was published, I believe, in 2022. In addition, in that same time frame, at least 22 black women have been killed by law enforcement. Those statistics really bother me. This is why we're going to lynch the white supremacists. We're going to find the white supremacists and we're going to lynch them. Police brutality had been going on long before 2009. As I mentioned in the preface, the Black Panther Party was started, in part, as a result of the killing of an unarmed black 16-year-old boy in 1966. Protests erupted in Los Angeles in 1992 when 3 white policemen who had savagely beaten Rodney King a year earlier were acquitted. In 1999, Amadou Diallo was fired on 41 times as he stood unarmed in the hallway of his apartment building. The officers involved in the case were all acquitted. Oh, frustrating. I'm about to pop a vein. As many of these killings can be described as modern-day lynchings, in 2018, the House unanimously passed the Justice for Victims of Lynching Act, a law that criminalized lynching for the first time in history. From 1882 to 1986, Congress failed to pass anti-lynching legislation 200 times. The bill, introduced by Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, Kamala Harris, the universe we're living in, the timeline we're living in sucks. I hate this life. I hate this life. I hate this life. The bill, introduced by Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, Kamala Harris, Democrat of California, and Tim Scott, Republican of South Carolina, is stalled in the Senate as of this writing. Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, wants an amendment that would weaken the language in the bill. Why? Why, Rand Paul? Why? You want to do some lynchings again? Okay. In fact, I hope the anti-lynching law did not pass. I don't know. Justice for Victims of Lynching Act, I hope it didn't pass because we're going to come lynch the white supremacists. We're going to catch them. We're going to pull out their penises. We're going to cut them off, and then we're going to have fun with their wives. All right, in 2017, black people represented 12% of the total U.S. population and 33% of the sentenced prison population. Let's repeat, these are staggering numbers. In 2017, black people represented 12% of the total U.S. population and 33% of the sentenced prison population. Whites accounted for 64% of the adult population and 30% of prisoners. And while Hispanics represented 16% of the adult population, they accounted for 23% of inmates. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, Native Americans are incarcerated at a rate 38% higher than the national average. While the gap is narrowing between whites and blacks in prison, a black boy born in 2001 still has a 1 in 3 chance of going to prison, while a white boy has a 1 in 17 chance. Another gross inequity in the criminal justice system is that black people represent a majority of innocent defendants wrongfully convicted of crimes and later exonerated. They constitute 47% of the 1,900 exonerations listed in the National Registry of Exonerations as of October 2016, and the great majority of more than 1,800 additional innocent defendants who were framed and convicted of crimes in 15 large-scale police scandals and later cleared in group exonerations. We must destigmatize black people, men in particular, as criminals. The media plays a large role in this. Studies show that the media reports of murders, thefts, and assaults where black people were suspects far outpace their actual arrest rates for such crimes. The media also portrays black suspects as more threatening and scarier than whites by showing mugshots of black suspects more frequently and perpetuating a narrative of white victimization. Mass incarceration is a serious problem. The United States represents 5% of the world's population and has the highest incarceration rate in the world at 25%. As chronicled in Michelle Alexander's landmark book, The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness, from 1980 to 2000, the number of incarcerated people jumped from 300,000 to 2 million, with the majority of those being people of color. The impetus was President Ronald Reagan's War on Drugs program. Rather than categorizing drug abuse as a public health issue as it is today, largely because more white people are now addicted, the program labeled it as a crime, and many people were sentenced to long jail terms without the possibility of parole. Systemic racism continues even after release, with laws that disallow felons to vote or to find gainful employment. This leads to high recidivism rates. Crazy stuff. As we jump into the summary of this chapter, then is now. Black people are fatigued because of the lack of progress in dismantling centuries-old racist systems. The forces that maintain the status quo are deeply entrenched. The widespread denial that racism is at the root of their interconnected issues is fatiguing and literally killing those who are the victims of this system. We must first change the narrative. Current strategies, by and large, focus on black people as the problem rather than intractable racist systems. We put band-aids on the issues with programs primarily designed to fix black people. If corporations want to help, they will not only offer passive support by declaring Juneteenth a holiday, that happened, and increasing their philanthropic dollars earmarked for black-serving institutions, they will become actively engaged in lobbying for anti-racist legislation. They will no longer be nonpartisan. They will dedicate resources to understanding and addressing both external and internal racism from the roots up. And that's the end of chapter 3, I believe, just checking. Yes, we're going to jump into chapter 4. Of all the forms of inequality, injustice in health is the most shocking and inhumane. Martin Luther King Jr., scholar, minister, and leader of the American Civil Rights Movement. I understand people being upset about the healthcare system. I just find, for me, personally, the stuff about police, locking up more black men being found innocent of crimes years later and exonerated after they had their lives taken away. Those, to me, are the most shocking and damning stuff. Let me check the audio real quick before we continue. There we go. Yeah, audio sounds absolutely crisp, lovely, perfect. Love how the audio is sounded. We're going to continue into chapter 4 to catch up on the reading, because yesterday we didn't get a chance to go live. So we'll be reading chapter 4, then we're going to call this a day. Hope you're enjoying the stream, anybody who's watching this on the playback. I'm glad that the former videos are actually getting views. Maybe I should make y'all wait to make y'all watch the other ones, because The Sublime Ignorance one is going up. It's at 100 views and 7 likes, so I'm glad about that. Very happy about that people are liking that live stream. I believe I also got a comment under that video as well. All right. Hold on. Let me check. All right. Let's go here. Yes, I had a comment under it, and it was from a crazy white supremacist who, all right. Yeah. So I'm a crazy white supremacist who's on the comment section of the previous video. But y'all go check that out. And y'all be easy out there. But let's continue reading. Y'all let me know. Should I erase a white supremacist comments? Acty says audio is good. I know the audio is good. I just checked. I got my little earpiece on. We just chilling. Shout out to Acty up in the live stream. Acty, let me know what you think about this text. We talking about black fatigue. Black fatigue. All right, let's jump into chapter 4. Racism literally makes you sick. It is a pre-existing condition. Fannie Lou Hamer, a black civil rights activist, said in 1964, "I am sick and tired of being sick and tired." She was referring to the fatigue associated with fighting for rights that were supposed to be guaranteed by the Constitution. This is now an iconic refrain that many black and brown people understand at their core and repeat to each other with no other words necessary because there is a collective understanding of exactly what it means. All right. Acty says expose them and then delete. I might do that, Acty. I might let them get exposed and then delete that ass. Anyway. Racism exhausts black people. We live in a world that for centuries was dehumanized, ostracized, murdered, and otherwise violated our human rights. The intergenerational fatigue that comes from enduring structural racism literally makes you sick. This chapter is for both black and white readers. I must admit that I was not in tune with the impact of racism on my physical and mental health until recently. The millennials on my team started to talk about rest as a form of resilience, the NAP ministry. And self-care. I felt confident that I took care of myself. I exercise, follow nutrition guidelines, and get 8 hours of sleep most nights. However, as someone who does diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work for a living and lives while black, I had to do some serious self-reflection on whether I was really attending to my well-being. And while I initially poohed the millennials' focus on the extra self-care black people may need, I came to understand the merit in their wisdom. At the height of the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, I experienced palpable pain, stress, and rage, and witnessed the same in some of my colleagues. There was crying and hyperventilating, and a few acknowledged they were on the brink of a meltdown. While these were unusually stressful times because those of us in the work were being bombarded with requests for urgent healing and listening sessions to quell the tensions and being in the middle of COVID-19, I now acknowledge the low-level ongoing stress that I described at the beginning of Chapter 1, My Black Fatigue. All right? Acty says, it's heartbreaking. My heart is tired of these statistics. I'm sorry, Acty. What we're going to do instead on this channel, instead of reading these books, we're going to react to Pop the Balloon. We're going to watch Pop the Balloon and react to the episodes live for the people. That's what we're going to do instead, because the statistics are breaking people's hearts. I know it's hard to read these books after a long day of work, when you're beat down by the man, when you're exploited for your labor and all that type of stuff, but we still going to get out here and educate ourselves and push our minds. Plus, it's summer. And we hate summer. Summer sucks. So what we're going to do instead to fill the time as we wait for summer to pass is do summer reading. And that's the point of Book React this year. Summer reading time. Let's go. So at the height of the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, I experienced palpable pain, stress, and rage, and witnessed the same in some of my colleagues. There was crying and hyperventilating, and a few acknowledging they were on the brink of a meltdown. While they were unusually stressful times because of those of us in the work were being bombarded with requests for urgent healing and listening sessions to quell the tensions and being in the middle of COVID-19, I now acknowledge the low-level ongoing stress that I described at the beginning of Chapter 1, My Black Fatigue. As black people, we need to pay attention to our health. All right. Going to Acty, she says, no, don't watch Pop the Balloon. Okay, I won't watch Pop the Balloon. No mo. I'm sick of that show. I hate that show. Every woman on Pop the Balloon is a freaky Jesus freak. I know they pop their coochies and that they pop the balloons at the same time because the man said he don't pray 7 times a day. All right. All right. Acty says you get slapped by the truth. Keep us angry. Trying to keep you more than angry. I'm trying to keep you informed, man. I'm trying to keep you informed, man. Continuing. Racism leads to health disparities. There is a common saying in the black community that when the world gets a cold, black people get pneumonia. And when the world gets pneumonia, black people die. Damn. I ain't never heard Granny say that. The recent coronavirus pandemic put a spotlight on this unfortunate reality. In many communities, black people died at 2 to 4 times their representation in the population. This chapter details the glaring health disparities between black and white people and their causes. According to Families USA, a national nonpartisan voice for healthcare consumers in 2019, these major health disparities existed between black and white people. Black people are 44% more likely to die from a stroke. Black people are 20% more likely to have asthma and 3 times more likely than white people to die from it. Black people are 25% more likely to die from heart disease. Black women are 40% more likely to die from breast cancer, titty cancer. Black women are 52% more likely to die from cervical cancer, pussy cancer, and 40% more likely to die from titty cancer than white women, even though the incident rate of breast cancer is comparable for the two groups. Black women are 243% more likely than white women to die from pregnancy or childbirth-related causes. That's because Shannon Sharp put some big black babies in them. When Shannon Sharp put a big black baby in you, there's a very good chance that that thing might rip you in half, split you in half. All right, men are Jesus freaks too, says Acty. Nope. We know that men will lie about worshiping the white man if it means getting into a black woman's coochie. Don't no black man follow Jesus like that. I repeat, the only black men that follow Jesus to a T are sissified black men. Let's keep it a buck. At this point in human history, we all know Christianity is the white man's slave religion. I'm keeping it a buck. So if there's any black man that worships Jesus Christ to the extent that people say they do, they sissified. I know they pop they bussy. Okay? So don't tell me that. It's a lie. College-educated black women have worse birth outcomes, for example, infant mortality, low birth weights, dying in childbirth, than white women who have not finished high school. Black women represent more than 66% of HIV/AIDS cases. Black men are 30% more likely and black women are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with high blood pressure. Why is it that I have 80% of the things on this list? Why is it that I have 80% of these things on this list? This is unfair. This is fucked up. It's fucked up. All right. Acty says, how is it any better if men lie about getting... Listen, man. If men didn't lie, the human species would not exist. Let's keep it a buck. If men did not lie about how much they love Jesus, there would be no more melanated people. Let's keep it absolutely real. 80% of the men who be up in church all the time are there because they got some pussy or they're trying to get some. Facts. And the other 20% are in there because they want some pussy or they already got some. Facts. Let's keep it real. Men who go to church either want pussy or pussy. Men who go to church want pussy or pussy. Facts. No black man worships Jesus like that. I'm standing on business. No black man looks at that skinny, paley, dusty, white Jesus on the cross and says, that's my God. No real black man does that. That actually says that is such a man answer because it's the truth. We all know Christianity was created by the white man as a way to subjugate themselves and then to subjugate us. No. The Christianity is a slave religion, and anybody who's doing it, technically, let's keep it real. Let's keep it absolutely real. There's a reason why women love Jesus. And it's because deep down inside, they want patriarchy. They want somebody to tell them that they are not equal to men. Facts. That's why you go up in church all the time and you see nothing but women. You see nothing but women because they want to believe in a book that says that they are less than human. Every religious book out there says women are less than human. And they be up in the church, in the mosque, in the synagogue. They want that. They like that. And black men, because the black man is God, realizes that we're just going to play the game. Yeah, we gonna say we worship Jehovah. We gonna say we worship Jesus, all that type of stuff, because we want to play the game. Okay, facts. All right, sorry. Acty got me off on a tangent here. She got me going off a tangent. Anyway, sorry. Black men are 1.3 times more likely to be diagnosed with colon cancers and 20% more likely to die from it. Black men are 20% more likely to report psychological distress. Black infants are 3.5 times more likely to die at birth because of low birth weight. Black infants have 2.2 times higher infant mortality rate regardless of the socioeconomic status of the mother. Black children are twice as likely to die from sudden infant death syndrome. Black children are twice as likely to have asthma. Black children are 56% more likely to be obese. Black children are 61% more likely to attempt suicide as high schoolers as a result of depression. All right, Acty says that's why she worships Satan. Should I block Acty? Should I kick Acty from the chat? Because even though we don't worship the white man's God, we don't worship Satan now. That's crazy. Okay, that's crazy. Tell me, everybody who's watching this in the playback, in the comment section, tell me, should I block Acty? Should I block her because she says she worships Satan? Let me know. Let me know. I might have to kick her from the chat or put her in timeout. I might put her in timeout. Okay. Anyway, health disparities result in lower life expectancies for Black people than any other ethnic group. According to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in 2017, the life expectancy in the United States for all races was 78.6 years, and the lowest for African Americans at 75.3 years. Even lower for African American men at 71.9 years, compared with the life expectancy for whites at 78.8 years. Compares white, African American, and Hispanic life expectancy. The life expectancy for Black men has declined since 2011 when it was 72.2 years. Damn. Okay. Okay. All right. So Acty says Satan is hot as F. Yes, that's because he's in hell, obviously. Do it, I dare you. Acty, I won't put you in timeout, but we're going to pray for you. We're going to pray for you. We're going to pray. We're going to make some dua for Acty. Oh, Acty. Oh, Yadallah, Yadallah, Yadallah. Ayatollah. God bless Acty. God protect Acty. May God see the light of Islam. Acty, we formally invite you to embrace Islam. We formally invite you to dress up like Diddy in a niqab. Okay? We formally invite you to the religion of peace. We formally invite you, Acty, to Islam. This is dawah to Acty. Okay? Leave Satan alone and come to the light. Come to the light. Anyway, researchers have coined the term excess deaths to explain the difference in life expectancy. If blacks and whites had the same mortality rate, nearly 100,000 fewer Black people would die each year in the United States. Even educated Black people are sicker and die younger than their educated white peers. A Black person will live, on average, about three fewer years than a white person with the same income. Wow. Racism causes chronic stress. There is a plethora of research to support the health disadvantage related to the harmful effects of chronic experiences with race-based discrimination, both real and perceived. These stressful experiences are thought to set into motion a process of physiological responses, for example, elevated blood pressure and heart rate, production of biochemical reactions, hypervigilance, that eventually result in disease and mortality. For example, researchers found that factors that predispose individuals to negative health outcomes include unfair treatment and social disadvantage, as well as other social stressors, such as inadequate levels of social support and the occurrence of everyday life events. Other studies examined the possible consequences of perceived discrimination and found that just the anticipation of being treated badly or unfairly had as powerful an impact on individuals' mental and physical states. Medical experts report that being socially rejected, experiencing stereotypes, and suffering discrimination trigger the same neural circuits that process physical injury and translate it into the experience we call pain. The social determinants of health established by the World Health Organization include access to social and economic opportunities, resources and supports available in homes, neighborhoods and communities, the quality of schooling, the safety of workplaces, the cleanliness of water, food, and air, and the nature of our social interactions and relationships, including the effects of racism. For a disproportionate number of black and brown people, these basic requirements for good health are absent because of structural racism, contributing to greater stress and more fatigue in pursuit of them. Auburn University released the results of a study in February 2020 that concluded that African Americans who reported more experiences with racial discrimination aged faster. That's why I look older. That's why I be looking older, man. I be dealing with too much. I know now that I look older because, number one, I didn't shave. And you can see that hairline is crazy. That's crazy. Boy, I got a crazy hairline. I need to go to Turkey and get my shit plugged up. But yeah, I be dealing with too much. Dealing with the whites. That's why I got the bags under my eyes. Anyway, Auburn University released the results of a study in February 2020 that concluded that African Americans who reported more experiences with racial discrimination aged faster, adding to the evidence that racism is not only a social and moral dilemma, but also a public health issue. Nearly 400 African Americans from Birmingham, Chicago, Minneapolis, and Oakland, California, participated in the study, which began in 2000, and the participants, on average, were 40 years old at the study's inception. According to the results, encountering racism led to higher levels of stress, which in turn caused cells to age more rapidly. This study focused on its effects on telomeres, pieces of DNA that protect cells. The study proves that a particular type of social toxin that disproportionately affects African Americans becomes embedded at the cellular level. Interesting. So racism can even affect your can affect your molecular structure. That's crazy. All right. Acty says, you look fine as fuck. No. I look delicious. I look scrumptious. I look absolutely fantastical. Boy, you better put some respect on me. Better put some respect on the name. All right. Poking my head in before my in my late 20s nap. Stay blessed, Simon and Acty. Shout out to Avery Adams as well. And shout out to everybody out there taking a nap. Take a nap. And in fact, you know what Book React can also do? Book React is a great way to fall asleep. Book React is a great way to fall asleep. You know, I'm reading this book right now, The Stolen Wealth of Slavery by David Montero. I'm reading that on my spare time. I'll be honest. It's not my favorite book, but it's a very important book. It's just David Montero is not that great of a writer, but it's very informative. And I got to say this. One time I was reading this on the tram here in Budapest, Hungary. Fell asleep, started snoring. Literally started snoring while reading this book. But it's still a good book. It's still a very good book. It's just very economical and scientific. You get what I'm saying? So it's not as moving for me as I thought it would be, though it is very, very informative, and I will be doing a review on this book when I finish it. But yeah, Book React, if you need a way to fall asleep, watch this series. Continuing here. Another study conducted in 2019 by Georgia State University corroborates the findings of the Auburn University study. This study found that experiencing discrimination early in life led to chronic worrying about it, which can cause significant wear and tear by increasing one's allostatic load, the lifelong buildup of stress, which accelerates aging and puts African Americans at greater risk of chronic illnesses. In summary, racism contributes to black people's getting sick at younger ages and having more severe illnesses, which leads to more rapid aging. Scientists call this the weathering hypothesis, or the result of cumulative stress. So basically, if you don't want to age, don't worry about racism. I guess that's why black Republicans want to be black Republicans. They want to look young forever. Black don't crack when you don't give a crap. Black don't crack if you don't give a crap. Is that what it is? Are we adding an addendum now to our classic phrase? Who knows? While we might think that higher socioeconomic status mitigates these outcomes, according to a study done by Ohio State University researchers, the self-reported health status got worse for black people as they climbed the socioeconomic ladder as opposed to whites, who reported better health based on higher socioeconomic status. The pressure of navigating a white power structure to maintain your status can be daunting. Middle-class, educated black people may fare worse in health because they are exposed to increased opportunities for discrimination, Some of it's subtle and in the form of microaggression discussed in Chapter 6 that multiply and increase stress. There may also be a higher chance of tokenism as upwardly mobile black and brown people find themselves as the only one or one of a few who have risen to their status in the organization. The pressure, real or perceived, that we represent the race adds to the level of stress. Even with all the rhetoric that we are individuals and do not represent or speak for the entire race, the reality is that we often do, or feel like we do. During healing sessions we conducted for several clients at the height of the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, we consistently heard the following from black employees about their experience in corporate America. There is no room for mistakes. We have to justify our reason for being. I am forever standing on a soapbox screaming for equality. I am on the defensive all the time. I am stressed to the max trying to fit in and be myself at the same time. Black people run from narrative of being lazy, so we overwork ourselves fearing that stereotype. I am isolated, alone, and misunderstood. We have to speak for all black people. Whether we like it or not, we represent the race. The extra emotional toll that it requires to succeed in corporate America is stressful and can affect one's physiological and psychological health. Place-based fear exacerbates stress. All right, let me just check. All right, yes. Place-based fear exacerbates stress. Let me just make sure this live is still running. Hold on, wait. Some crazy stuff just happened. Let me just make sure the live is still running. Hold on, let me just check. Okay, no, we're good. All right, so race-based health effects are often unrecognized and therefore are an unacknowledged phenomenon. There are many aspects of living while black that can induce negative health consequences. The most serious source of this is our fear for our lives. It is stress-inducing to worry about your safety and that of your loved ones. We can look throughout history at many situations in which black people have been killed for being in the wrong place, allegedly doing the wrong thing. I mentioned the numerous lynchings throughout history in Chapter 3 and Emmett Till in the preface. As mentioned in the last chapter, there are a number of high-profile cases in recent history, such as those of Trayvon Martin in 2012, Mike Brown in 2014, Tamir Rice 2014, Botham in 2019, Philando Castile in 2016, Eric Garner in 2014, and the most recent ones that sparked the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, Ahmaud Arbery 2020, Breonna Taylor 2020, and George Floyd 2020. Less publicized cases of black women being killed by police includes those of Shelley Frey, I think she meant 2012 because she wrote 2102, but I wouldn't be surprised if she's predicting the future. Eleanor Bumpurs, 1984, Margaret Laverne Mitchell, 1999, Sandra Bland, 2015, among others. These incidents are devastating for the communities and the families and for black people who empathize with the victims of brutality and hold the fear that it could have been them or someone close to them. Compounding the devastation is the fact that in most cases there is no justice. The police officers who perpetrate these heinous crimes are most often acquitted based on self-defense or stand-your-ground claims. Between 2005 and April 2017, 80 officers have been arrested on murder or manslaughter charges for on-duty shootings. During that 12-year span, 35% were convicted, while the rest were pending or not convicted, according to work by Philip Stinson, an associate professor of criminal justice at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. There can be a great deal of anxiety associated with daily concerns about how the color of your skin will affect even the simplest interactions. I call this place-based fear, when you find yourself in a place where you might not be welcome. It is common for black people to ask, is it okay to go to that part of town? Is it okay to visit that country? How do they treat black people there? There is a fear of being in a place where you will experience racial profiling and the dire consequences that might result. While a student at Harvard, my son Joe and some friends, all black, were studying late night in an on-campus lounge. Apparently someone called security and they were questioned about their right to be there, doubting that they could possibly be Harvard students. While maybe not a life-threatening fear, I am sure that these young men experienced some level of anxiety as to what might happen to them. Right around that same time in 2018, 3 black people were checking out of a California Airbnb when 7 police cars arrived and demanded that they put their hands in the air. A neighbor had reported a robbery in progress because she saw them loading luggage into a car. The ordeal took 45 minutes to resolve and included a helicopter being summoned and the need to show proof that they had rented the house. God damn. One of the 3, a filmmaker, chronicled the ordeal on Facebook. We have been dealing with different emotions, and you want to laugh about this, but it's not funny, she wrote. The trauma is real. I've been angry, frustrated, and sad. I was later detained at the airport. This is insanity. America. This is not what you think it is. America. Place-based fear manifests even with seemingly innocuous daily events like shopping. Black people are targeted and followed in department stores more often and profiled as thieves. There may also be assumptions about their ability to pay. Oprah encountered this situation in a Swiss department store several years ago where she was considering purchasing a very expensive purse, $38,000, and the salesperson did not recognize her and refused to let her see it because it was too expensive. I had this happen numerous times when I was trying to purchase items, not anywhere close to Oprah's league, mind you. But apparently, to the salesperson, I looked like I could not afford them. These situations affected how I approach salespeople. When they were younger, my kids would ask me why I was so mean when I entered a department store. I would say, "What are you talking about? I am not mean." I realized that because I had been treated so poorly in the past situations, I had my defenses up. Unconsciously, I was thinking, nobody's going to mistreat me today. These race-based experiences elicit not only fear, but also frustration and even anger, inciting the angry black woman stereotype and adding stress. All right, Acti says, oh my God, that's insane. Imagining this happening on your holiday. I'm suing everybody. Facts. You're suing everybody, and guess what's going to happen? The Republican administration is going to throw your case out and say that's woke DEI bullshit. And now go into Oprah and the writer of this text, I find Oprah's situation interesting because I wonder if Oprah ended up buying that $38,000 purse from this racist institution. I wouldn't have. Secondly, this woman here, Mary Frances Winters, talking about how every time she walks into a department store, she tenses up. This is how I feel going into every supermarket in the world. I've been followed around in every single supermarket in the world. This is why I don't even go into some. I literally go into one supermarket here in Budapest, Hungary, because the security guards, the whole staff, and every other supermarket I've been in have been viciously racist, super racist, and I'm sick of it. That's why I only shop at one fucking place, because every other place I go followed the fuck around. I don't even go in some. The Chinese stores, the supermarkets, Lidl, Idol, Spar, whatever, all of them. Fuck all of them. I hate them. Aldi, fuck all of them. Fuck them superstores, man. I hate them bitches. Hate supermarkets. I hate supermarkets because of the racist ass people. There ain't even enough black people in Budapest to steal nothing. And we don't want none of the bullshit that they got in Budapest. Fucking Hungarians. Anyway. All right. Acti says, I'm not American. LOL. F them. Anyway, continuing here. Even scarier is being in the wrong place at the wrong time and facing the threat of being misidentified. In 2018, a 21-year-old black man was killed by a police officer who thought he was involved in a melee in a mall. They very soon afterward realized that he was not the shooter, and in fact was trying to de-escalate the situation. In February 2020, I was in the Moline, Illinois airport working on this book when I started to listen to a news report about a young black man who attended Eastern Illinois University. Illinois police officers wrongfully arrested, detained, and threatened to shoot 19-year-old Jalen Butler while pointing a gun to his forehead at a rest stop as he traveled with the school's swim team. These are just two examples of many situations that I hear about on almost daily basis that engender fear, increasing the stress of living while black. Constantly living with the perceived or real threats associated with the color of our skin leads to greater internalized stress, which in turn leads to physiological and psychological illnesses that disproportionately affect us. Unfortunately, many may not associate their physical and emotional symptoms with race-based stress, which can manifest as the more serious conditions of trauma. Racism leads to race-based intergenerational trauma. Race-based trauma has been getting more attention over the past decade. Robert Carter, professor of psychology and education in the Department of Counseling and Clinical Psychology at Teachers College, Columbia University, is an expert in what he has termed race-based traumatic stress injury, defined as the emotional and psychological trauma caused by discrimination and racism that elicit responses comparable to those associated with post-traumatic stress injury. One may express the trauma through anxiety, anger, rage, depression, low self-esteem, or shame, and it may manifest as depression, fatigue, diseases such as high blood pressure or diabetes, or mental disorders. Author and former college professor in social work, Joy DeGruy, coins the term post-traumatic slave syndrome in a book by the same name, defining it as a condition that exists when a population has experienced multi-generational trauma resulting from centuries of slavery and continues to experience oppression and institutionalized racism today. Adding to this condition is a belief, real or imagined, that the benefits of the society in which they live are not accessible to them. She asserts that survivor syndrome manifests in the second and third generations as stress, self-doubt, problems with aggression, and a number of psychological and interpersonal relationship problems with family members and others. All right. Social scientists have also coined the term historical trauma to refer to the multi-generational communal trauma that oppressed and marginalized groups have faced. In a 2013 article in The Atlantic called How Racism is Bad for Our Bodies, the author points out that the cyclical effects of discrimination lead to embodied inequality, which creates poor health outcomes that are passed down from generation to generation. The result is a vicious cycle in which the sickest and poorest remain sick and poor. The cycle starts with young children, which I discuss in Chapter 8. A growing and somewhat controversial branch of science, epigenetics, studies the extent to which our social environments can alter gene activity that can be passed down from generation to generation. Shannon Sullivan, chair and professor of philosophy at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, penned an article, Inheriting Racist Disparities in Health, Epigenetics, and the Transgenerational Effects of White Racism, which outlines how people of color can biologically inherit the harmful effects of racism. She uses preterm birth rates as an example. Black women, 16.8%, regardless of income, are more likely than other groups, 10.3% of white women, to deliver early, and this has been connected to accumulated stress. This disparity has not improved since the 1970s. Implicit and explicit bias contribute to lower quality healthcare. In 2003, the Institute of Medicine, Academy of Medicine, released a landmark report called Unequal Treatment, which outlined stark health disparities for non-white populations. Among the findings were that poverty, lack of insurance, or lack of access did not totally account for the fact that black people are sicker and have shorter lifespans than white people. The study found that racial and ethnic minorities receive lower quality health care than white people, even when insurance status, income, age, and severity of conditions are comparable. The National Academy of Medicine reported that people of color were less likely than white people to be given appropriate cardiac care, to receive kidney dialysis or transplants, and to receive the best treatment for strokes, cancer, or AIDS. In its conclusion, some people in the United States were more likely to die from cancer, heart disease, and diabetes simply because of their race or ethnicity, not just because they lack access to health care. This study shed light on the stark reality that race is a determinant of the quality of health care in this country. Sadly, not much has changed in health outcomes for black and brown people in almost 20 years since that report was released. A number of newer studies show that black and brown people continue to have disparate health outcomes, as presented at the beginning of this chapter, and continue to be subjected to the racial biases, conscious or implicit, of healthcare providers. Here are a few examples. According to an October 2015 report in JAMA Internal Medicine, published by the American Medical Association, on average, white Americans spent 80 minutes waiting for or receiving care, while black Americans spent 99 minutes and Latinos 105 minutes waiting for or receiving that same care. Black and Hispanic patients in U.S. emergency rooms are less likely to receive medication to ease acute pain than their white counterparts. Researchers examined the data from 14 previously published studies in American emergency rooms that included 7,070 white patients, 1,538 Hispanic patients, and 3,125 black patients. The study found that compared with white patients, black patients were 40% less likely to receive medication to ease acute pain, and Hispanic patients were 25% less likely. The study's authors concluded that while the reasons are complex, unconscious bias was likely a contributing factor. A study of 400 hospitals in the United States showed that black patients with heart disease received older, cheaper, and more conservative treatments than their white counterparts. Black patients were less likely to receive coronary bypass operations and angiography. After surgery, they are discharged earlier from the hospital than white patients, at a stage when discharge is inappropriate. Black women are less likely than white women to receive mastectomies in general and radiation therapy in conjunction with a mastectomy. Black people are less likely to be prescribed newer medicine for mental disorders. Rather, they tend to be offered older medicine with worse side effects. Specifically, a drug called clozapine, which is considered to be superior psychiatric medicine, is prescribed less in minority patients with serious mental illness than compared with white patients. Middle-class black women are still 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. Lack of access to quality medical care and other social factors being ruled out, experts say racism, not race, is the cause. All of these are horrific. All of these are horrific. And I find it even more troubling that most likely the next generation of psychiatrists, medical doctors, people in the medical field are not being taught about this. So we're just going to continue replicating the same thing because bringing up these types of truths is probably very inconvenient. And when you have nothing but white teachers at white institutions telling you the white man's lies, you're going to get the same bullshit over again. So continuing here. Evidence that implicit bias, defined as unconscious attitudes or stereotypes about a particular social group that influence behaviors, contributes to these disparities, comes from results of administering the implicit association test to physicians. The implicit association test, developed by Harvard researchers, measures the strength of associations between race and evaluations, for example, good or bad. One study showed that physicians with implicit association test scores that revealed them to have pro-white implicit biases were more likely to prescribe pain medications to white patients than to black patients. But see how that worked out? Now all the whites are addicted to heroin and they're slowly dying. So we don't even have to lynch them anymore. We don't have to lynch the white supremacists. They basically lynch themselves. See how God works? See how God works? Because the racist doctors didn't want to give black people pain medication, now Conrad and Joey are all addicted to opioids and dying of fentanyl. See, God works. God does work. Anyway, in another study, physicians with pro-white biases were less likely to prescribe thrombolysis to black patients and more likely to prescribe the treatment to white patients. Environmental racism disproportionately impacts black communities. One of the social determinants of health is where you live, and many poor black and brown people live in what are called food deserts. Studies show that poverty and race both matter in having access to healthy food options. When comparing communities, research shows that black and Hispanic neighborhoods have fewer large supermarkets and more small grocery stores than their white counterparts with similar poverty levels. Many major grocery chains and restaurants choose not to locate in black neighborhoods. Persistent redlining and economic inequality, as mentioned in Chapter 3, limit opportunities for where many black people can live. Many of the neighborhoods are packed with unhealthy fast food restaurants and small convenience stores with higher prices, which leads to higher rates of childhood obesity and other chronic conditions such as high blood pressure and heart disease. Not only are many of these neighborhoods food deserts, they also have poor quality drinking water, high levels of lead, and fewer green spaces, all contributing to poorer health outcomes. The Environmental Protection Agency's National Center for Environmental Assessment released a study in 2018 indicating that people of color are much more likely to live near polluters and breathe polluted air. The study found that black people are exposed to 1.5 times more pollutants than white people, and that Hispanics had about 1.2 times the exposure of non-Hispanic whites. These findings were against the backdrop of the Environmental Protection Agency's and the Trump administration's plans to dismantle many of the institutions built to address those disproportionate risks. Access to quality care is still an issue. While the disparities in access to mental and physical health care have improved greatly over the years, they persist. The Affordable Care Act improved access to care. According to a study by the Commonwealth Fund, between 2013 and 2015, disparities narrowed for blacks and Hispanics on three key access indicators: the percentage of uninsured working-age adults, the percentage who did not seek care because of costs, and the percentage who did not have a primary care provider. Under the Affordable Care Act, uninsured rates for blacks decreased from 19% to 10.7% from 2013 to 2017, and from 30% to 19% for Latinos, and from 12% to 7% for whites of the same time period. However, these gains started to show statistically significant declines under the Trump administration. The Trump administration has made several changes to the Act's implementation, altering the availability of coverage and the likelihood that people would enroll. As a result, both whites and blacks had small but statistically significant increases in their uninsured rates in 2017, which rose by 0.2 percentage points for whites from 7.1% to 7.3%, and by 0.4 percentage points for blacks from 10.7% to 11.1%. These types of changing policies, which are at the whim of changing political ideologies, add to the fatigue of not being assured that gains will be sustained. We just need a public option, man. We're the one country in the world where the government doesn't offer its own health insurance. Instead, it's all private, and it's all bad. Compounding the access issue is the fact that studies show, for example, that people of color are less likely to seek mental health solutions, even when accessible, as there is a cultural stigma attached. In the African American and Latino communities, many people misunderstand what a mental health condition is and don't talk about this topic. This lack of knowledge leads many to believe that a mental health condition is a personal weakness. According to a study by Cigna, black people are 50% less likely to receive counseling or mental health treatment. Black people are more likely to distrust medical professionals. Complicating the access issue is trust. In a 2007 study reported in the American Journal of Public Health, blacks and Hispanics reported higher levels of physician distrust than did whites. In general, lower socioeconomic status, defined as lower income, lower education, and no health insurance, was associated with higher levels of distrust, and men reported more distrust than women. There is a long history of discrimination against and exploitation of Black Americans and other marginalized groups in the health system, which contributes to continued mistrust. The intergenerational memory of medicines using Black people for experimentation without our consent is deeply embedded in our collective consciousness. In the antebellum period, blacks were forced to serve as subjects for dissections, and corpses robbed from graves served as a constant source of surgical experimentation. The psychiatric definition of dryptomania, runaway slave syndrome, was created as a diagnosis for African Americans who fled their slave masters in amputation of extremities. The worst things come from psychiatrists and psychologists. I swear to God, the worst things in human history have come from psychiatrists and psychologists. During Reconstruction, white doctors advanced the theory that former slaves would not thrive in a free society because psychologically their minds could not handle freedom. In the Civil Rights era, psychiatrists called civil rights activists schizophrenic and labeled them as violent, hostile, and paranoid, which is one reason why Black people have an aversion to acknowledging mental health concerns. The Tuskegee syphilis study, in which hundreds of Black men, without their consent, were intentionally administered syphilis and denied treatment, became the very embodiment of the way medicine and medical research was used against Black Americans. The Tuskegee experiments are a prime example of why the Black community distrusts physicians and research. Just this year, French scientists recommended using African people as human guinea pigs to test a vaccine for the coronavirus. The doctor later apologized and said that his comments were misinterpreted. I think that we should use the Negroes for the coronavirus vaccine. It sounds like good. It's a good idea. Pardon, my English is not good, but fuck niggas. Okay, continuing here. Henrietta Lacks was a Black woman who died in 1951 at age 31 of cervical cancer. Without her family's knowledge or consent, her cancer cells, which carried a unique replication quality, were shared with researchers for decades. Known as the HeLa cell line, Henrietta's contribution aided the development of the Salk polio vaccine and enhanced understanding of bacterial infection, HIV, and tuberculosis, among other diseases. Her cells revolutionized the field of medicine, and it was not until 2010, when a book was published entitled The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, that this story became known. In 2013, her family reached an agreement with the National Institute of Health to allow continued use of the cells and to acknowledge Lax's contribution. The agreement, however, did not provide any financial compensation. Horrible. Literally using the black body. Literally using the black body. Harriet A. Washington forcefully argues in her book, Medical Apartheid, The Dark History of Medical Experimentation on Black Americans from Colonial Times to Present, that racial discrimination has shaped both the relationship between white physicians and black patients and the attitudes of black people toward modern medicine in general. She speaks to the cultural memory of medical experimentation and the complex relationship between racism and medicine. This intergenerational lack of trust caused by the unethical practice of the medical profession targeted at black people often keeps us from seeking care, exacerbating the disparities. So what are the solutions? The complexities of racial inequities inherent in the healthcare and associated systems makes it very difficult and too often impossible for black people to sustain healthy minds, bodies, and spirits. The problems are intergenerational, interconnected, multidimensional, and need to be addressed inside and outside the healthcare system. While there are no easy fixes, continuing to raise awareness helps tremendously. We must continue to fund the academic research that is bringing these inequities to light and ensure that cultural competence and implicit bias training is included in curricula for healthcare professionals. While studies show that over the last 20 years, more medical schools are including cultural competence training in their programs, it is still inconsistent in application and content, and experts admit improvements are needed. More policies need to be enacted to establish strategies to minimize racism in the healthcare system. As an example, in 2019, the American Association of Pediatrics issued its first policy on racism's impact on child health. It establishes practical strategies to mitigate racism at the structural, interpersonal, and intrapersonal levels. Among other things, it calls for trauma-informed care. Such care reframes the thinking of the caregiver from what is wrong with this person to what has happened to this person. Recognizing that healthcare professionals do not always receive adequate training in cultural competence, the Winters Group developed a comprehensive training program for large hospital systems called Radical Inclusion, a 3-day immersion experience. It is designed to support leaders, physicians, and other medical professionals in enhancing the patient experience. We chose the term radical because of its meaning, relating to or affecting the fundamental nature of something, far-reaching or thorough. Inclusion incorporates the tenets of cultural competence, the ability to discern, respect, and consider cultural difference in decision-making, problem-solving, and conflict resolution. We want participants to think about the needed change as not incremental, but transformational. The learning experience focuses on developing cultural understanding, self-understanding, understanding cultural differences, building alliances across differences, and engaging in bold, inclusive conversations. Intrapersonal and interpersonal solutions. It is important to address the physiological and psychological toll at the individual level. We often internalize racism, unconsciously or consciously embodying negative stereotypes that white supremacist culture has about black people. In our interpersonal relationships, we are regularly subjected to racist verbal attacks or worse, heightening stress and anxiety. We have learned a multitude of ways to take care of our mental and physical health. Ardent belief in God. Black people as a group are strong in their Christian faith. Ugh, gross. Ugh, brother. Ugh, I knew it was going here. No, in fact, I didn't know it was going here. I'm shocked. Ugh, brother. Ugh. Black people as a group are strong in their Christian faith. Oh, God. According to a Pew survey, 75% of blacks versus 49% of whites say that religion is very important to them. And 54% of black people, both Christian and non-Christian, say they read the Bible at least once a week. Oh, outside of religious services. Compared with 32% of whites. Even though slaves did not come to the United States as Christians, they soon embraced the religion's tenets. After the Civil War, the black church movement grew quickly, and it continues to play a key role in strengthening black communities by providing spiritual as well as socio-economic support. Black people rely on our belief in God as a primary way of enduring the pain of racism. From the days of slavery, believing that God would see us through kept us from giving up. During Black History Month, especially songs like We've Come This Far by Faith and the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Sing a song full of the faith. Oh, wait, hold. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. I forgot who sang it. I think it's the Betty Wright version. The Betty Wright version of Lift Every Voice and Sing makes me cry. I don't know if it's Betty Wright or some other singer. I gotta look at it. It's in my unskippable songs playlist on SoundCloud. But yeah, shout out to Lift Every Voice and Sing. Sorry if I butchered it. I can't sing for shit. I suck at music. I'm a failed rapper. So anyway, Lift Every Voice and Sing is commonly sung. Preachers and politician Adam Clayton Powell's famous refrain, Keep the Faith, sums up what many Black people do to survive and thrive in a racist world. Disconnecting from the temporal and operating at a higher level of consciousness that transcends our earthly existence is how we often find joy and peace. Self-care. Self-care is critical for everyone who faces the stresses associated with racism and other isms. Black and brown people are learning to lean on strategies such as mindfulness to heal the intergenerational fatigue of racism. In her book, The Inner Work of Racial Justice, Healing Ourselves and Transforming Our Communities Through Mindfulness, lawyer and mindfulness practitioner Rhonda McGee provides practical strategies for individuals to process the pain that arises when we push ourselves or are pushed by others outside of our racial identity comfort zone. She says the practice of mindfulness can help us in knowing ourselves, becoming more familiar with the habit of our minds and our own emotional reactions of anger, confusion, numbness, and outrage when we see racism. It helps us become more self-compassionate, she asserts, minimizing the impact of encountering racism. Practices such as meditation, yoga, journaling, and reflection, when done with intention and consistency, can be helpful. In partnership with My True Self, a socially conscious wellness, coaching, and consulting practice, the Winters Group launched the Physiology of Inclusion, in particular to support people in managing the emotional toll associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion work. It is a whole body system to raise awareness and enable strategies for resilience that improve physical, mental, and emotional health, specifically targeted to DEI practitioners. However, this system can support anyone in a marginalized group. This system comprises the three foundational elements of eating, sleeping, and exercising that precedes the three enabling elements necessary for enacting inclusion: thinking, being, and interacting. Too often we hear about the emotional, mental, and physical toll DEI can take on a person's health and ability to stay engaged in the work. It is important to prioritize our well-being if we are truly going to be effective in shifting organizational cultures and influencing systems. Through the partnership with My True Self, the Winters Group and learning experiences. At the interpersonal level, healing circles have become a popular approach for groups to come together to share individual truths, history, and stories. Based on indigenous and African traditions, healing circles affirm and validate Black voices. The circle is set up so that each person has an opportunity to share his or her story or truth without judgment and uninterrupted. Borrowing from Native American practices, sometimes the talking stick is passed around and only the person with the talking stick is allowed to speak. With the guidance of a skilled facilitator, the desired outcome is to support each person in the group in his or her healing journey. As one example, Safe Black Space Community Healing Circles were launched in 2018 in response to increased racial tension and trauma in the Sacramento, California community after the killing by police of Stephon Clark, an unarmed Black man. The monthly Safe Black Space Healing Circles are for people who self-identify as being of African ancestry and are experiencing racial stress, anxiety, or trauma. Sessions include African-centered healing strategies such as libations and drumming, mindfulness, and other self-care exercises. There are many other organizations that sponsor healing circles throughout the country. I wonder if the healing circles are great places to pick up hoes or to find big booty white women. I wonder which one you get at the healing circle. If you go to the healing circle and you dress to impress, are you leaving with a pog or are you leaving with Michelle Obama? Which one you leaving with at the healing circle? I need to know. Anyway, continuing here, wrapping up this chapter. Healing and resilience are not curses. Healing and resilience techniques are important for staying physically and mentally well. However, such approaches deal with the symptoms and do not fix the underlying systems that cause the need to heal. Resilience connotes bouncing back from difficult experiences. If the difficult experiences never go away, the situations begin to bear a resemblance to that of Sisyphus in Greek mythology. His boulder started rolling down the hill right when he thought he was nearing the top. Why are black and brown people still required to push boulders up hills anyway? In a post in the Winters Group's Inclusion Solution blog, Tamara Subramanian, learning and innovation manager at our firm, eloquently points out that the rise of resilience training in corporate settings has been misconstrued as a sustainable solution to wellness, ultimately putting the burden of problems driven by the organization onto the individual. This is essentially a company saying to its employees, hey, the discrimination and adversities you face at work will lessen if you gain the tools to bounce back, because the isms you face are just a part of life. Reframing our own narrative, positive self-talk that transforms into positive attitudes and behaviors can be helpful. So, from being black is exhausting to racism is exhausting. Black people are more prone to certain diseases. It is inevitable. Systemic racism affects my health. I need to understand the influence of white supremacy on my well-being and not internalize it. So this is a way of subverting the idea. Instead of saying being black is exhausting, no, white supremacy is causing us to be exhausted, right? It doesn't come from us. We need to change our subjectivity, right? I do not have time for self-care. There is at least one thing I can do for me every day to lessen the stress of living while black. I do not go to doctors because I do not trust them. I will seek out a black doctor whom I might feel more comfortable with. The doctor said I have, ... Question the results. Question the recommended treatment options. Get a second and third opinion. Do your own research. Fact. I like that. That was dope. So, in summary for Chapter 4, racism is a significant factor contributing to health disparities that affect black people. And many of these health disparities are not correlated with socioeconomic status. The vicious cycle of racism that causes ill health, compounded by more racism, which causes more ill health, is staggeringly fatiguing. Strategies to heal and bounce back from the pain are important, but fail to dismantle the systems that cause the pain. We have to come together as a society to find the keys that open the interlocked systems that are so tightly bound in the history of oppression and violence that there seems to be no way to loosen them, let alone unlock them. Excellent chapter, very deep and profound chapter. I learned a lot of things in that as she discussed health. There's so much here that, that we have to consider when talking about race and white supremacy and black fatigue in general, and how it affects our literal physical health, even down to a cellular, molecular level. It's very deep and profound. So it is rare that others see beyond the ism vortex and first recognize my talents. As a person living at the intersection of three marginalized identities, I often wonder where I fall in the political agenda of big decision makers. Crystal Emery, filmmaker and writer. Yeah, we're all composed of many different things. We're Muslim, we're smart, we're, musicians, we're poets, we're scientists, we're engineers, we're entrepreneurs, we're journalists. But to a lot of people, the first thing you are is black, and then your gender. And then some people can't even go further than that when just summing you up. You get what I'm saying? So very, very powerful stuff here. For tomorrow's live stream, we're going to read Chapter 5, The Many Layers of Black Fatigue. I promise it will be done on time. Sorry for the people that were tuned in yesterday, but shout out to everybody that's tuning in to the newest one that we're doing, because the Black Fatigue episodes for episode 3 is going up. And I'm pretty sure it's most likely white supremacists. But I would appreciate it if people left comments. Leave your comments. Let me know what you think about the content, right? And we'll continue to build together. So y'all be easy out there. My name is Simon Hill. We're going to wrap up this live stream. Make sure you pick up this book on Amazon. Not hard to find, not that expensive, and we need to support black authors, for real, for real. All right? And y'all be easy out there.